called the challenge modes. Another core philosophy that we have is getting people back into the world. I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting a little bit tired of seeing the inside of Stormwind and Orgrimmar all the time. Great cities and all, very lovely places, but standing in the city queuing for stuff, all the time can get a little bit old. So, just like a lot of you guys, it sounds like, we want to get people back out into the world at max level and experiencing the world, and that means a lot of different things. It means getting out there and having a fun questing experience. It means getting out there and doing stuff like, pictured here, we've got an old school shot of Azure Ghost. So one of the things that we're planning to do is to kind of reintroduce the concept of these outdoor world raid mobs for players to fight. And of course, where there are outdoor world raid mobs that people are fighting on PvP servers, that means that there will be people there trying to grief the people doing the outdoor world raid fighting. So yeah, it's a little bit of that Horde Alliance conflict Chris was referring to. So another core philosophy that we have is that we want you to be able to do what you want to do to progress your character. Over time, World of Warcraft has kind of blossomed with all these different things to do, and we're going to be adding more different things to do. And we really want the game to feel like there's a menu of content, and that you can pick and choose what kind of content you want to do, and you're not necessarily pigeonholed into the content that you feel like you have to do in order to be able to progress your character. So what we're trying to say here is that we want you to be able to progress your character whether or not you're raiding, doing dungeons, or even doing daily quests, for example. And so that's what that little image is there. You got a little quest turn in there. Imagine that's a daily quest that you're turning in, and you're getting Valor points out of it. So that way you can actually get Valor points and progress your character, even if you're just the guy that wants to go out there and quest. Granted, it'll be faster if you're doing raids, or if you're doing, hard mode raids, all that kind of stuff, heroic raids, but you'll still be able to make progress all the time. Next, we really want you to be able to geek out with more interesting character builds than ever before. I was there back in 2004 when we created the talent system. In fact, that was kind of my job, was to create the talent system that you guys have experienced over the last many, many years. We had this vision, right? Back then, it was in the Friends and Family Alpha that we were getting constant feedback. This was before we had a talent system, or at least one that you know of today. And we would get constant feedback about players wanting to be able to customize their character more. They wanted to be able to stand next to another character of the same class and feel like they were a little bit different, that they made some choices and that those choices were meaningful, and that led to their gameplay experience feeling a little bit different and that their character was special. So with that in mind, we went out and we created the original talent system. I would say that it was, the talent system was pretty cool. We drew a lot from stuff like the Diablo 2 skills system, that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, I don't actually feel like it's aged as well as I wish it had. I feel like, we've been plagued over the years with cookie cutter builds, right? And how much choice do you really have when you step into your raid or whatever, and your raid leader's telling you, well, those 4 points that you spent right there are going to cost you, 4% DPS, and we really can't have that, so you're going to have to take a hike, that sort of thing. So we want to try to make sure that we refine what we call the talent system to get to the point where we don't have the cookie cutter builds that we have today, and that the choices that you're making are significant choices for your character, but that you actually have a lot of flexibility about how to set up your character and how to play it. So we'll be going into a lot more detail in this talk and also in the talent panel with exactly what that is. So with that, we have the introduction, of course, to the continent of Pandaria. So Corey's going to step up and tell you guys all about the continent itself.
Hey guys. So everyone knows where you're going to be playing. You've heard what Pandaria is, but now we want to show you and tell you about what you're actually going to be playing in. What is this place? So it's going to be 5 new zones of level up zones is what we're looking at for the continent itself. Another thing that we're changing here is the fact that we're going to go back to a single unified continent. So if you remember back to Burning Crusade, or you think about Northrend, we had one single continent with all the zones together. With Cataclysm, we changed that up a little bit, and our zones were separated in different places. We kind of felt like that didn't make it feel like one unified place. Instead, it felt a little separated and just didn't have that same vibe. So with Pandaria, we're going to be going back to that same kind of hit where we've got all the zones and they're going to make one unified place. As you've probably seen from the cinematic, we've clearly got an Asian influence on the landscapes and the environments and everything you're seeing here. It's been super cool just to see the artists at Blizzard take that and turn it really into a unique World of Warcraft style. Because you could take that and just, kind of make it look specifically Chinese or Asian or one specific look, but we've really put that World of Warcraft look at it, so when people see it, they instantly think, wow. Another thing that's going to be a little different that we haven't done actually really since Burning Crusade is we're going to have an auction house in the new continent. So actually on Pandaria, you'll have an auction house that you'll have access to. Now granted, you're still going to need to go to Stormwind to Orgrimmar for certain things that you're going to need to do, but we want people to have that convenience that if you're at the new continent and you like playing there, you should be able to stay there in Pandaria. You shouldn't necessarily have to always be going back all the time. And another thing we're going to be changing is we're not going to have flying until max level. And it's great to see that response because that's really how we feel about it. I don't know about you, but for us, it's just questing. Every time you kill a mob, you've got to get on your mount, fly up in the air, fly over something, land back down again, dismount, fly, then mount up again. Even though it feels convenient and fast, in the long run, we just don't really feel like it gives the best questing experience that you could have. So by going back to this, we really feel like we're going to get a better core quest experience. So here's a look at the continent as a whole. This is anyone that's been to Blizzcon before has probably seen this. This is how we start out our design process. We lay out everything in 2D and get a feel for how it's going to play out. So you can see the 5 zones here. We've kind of got a central valley, the Vale of Eternal Blossoms. We've got dungeons across all the different zones. I'm going to talk a little bit about 2 of these zones. The Jade Forest, which is our intro, our start zone, and then the Valley of the Four Winds there on the south side. One thing that's cool is we've really been working on this for a while, so we've got a lot of stuff to show you guys. I think this is probably the first BlizzCon we're going to be able to actually show video fly-throughs of these zones with their art complete and ready to see. Here's a little look at the scale. So there's Twilight Highlands from Cataclysm, so you can just get a vibe for how big these zones are. Yes, we're delivering 5 zones, but they're really large zones. And when you add that to the fact that you're not going to have access to a flying mount till max level, you can really see there's going to be a ton of content in these zones. So a little bit about Pandaria. Pandaria has been around for a long time. The thing is, it's been shrouded by mist since the Sundering, so no one's really had access to it. The Pandaren have been alone there for all this time. They've been undiscovered. As Chris was kind of mentioning in the opening, the Alliance and Horde are locked in an intense battle. That's something that's always been the core of World of Warcraft, right? And we want to follow that up here. So they're in a naval battle somewhere close, near to the continent, and that's how they end up discovering it. They end up having a naval battle offshore, ships end up getting blown up, and Alliance and Horde end up washing up on the shores of Pandaria. And it's been revealed, thanks to the events of the Cataclysm, has finally unshrouded the mist, and you're able to find the continent. The Alliance versus Horde aspect of this, though, is that once they land here and they find it, they realize that it's a lush land, it's full of resources and all kinds of things that Garrosh could use and things that Varian can use in their war. And so they're basically going to just destroy this land, trying to get what they can out of it. And that's where we come in. Now, we've got a whole panel on story and lore. It's tomorrow at 4:15. So if you guys want some more info on that, be sure to hit up that panel. Now, besides the continent itself of Pandaria, we've also got a new start zone. So anyone that rolls a new Pandaren is going to have a new start zone to play in. What's really crazy about this start zone is that it's a turtle. You guys are going to see it here in a little bit. We've got some shots of it in a video. But essentially, you're playing on the back of a giant turtle. This turtle left Pandaria 10,000 years ago and started growing. And the Pandaren have always been happy with Pandaria. They haven't wanted to leave, but a few of them have gotten what we call the wanderlust. They kind of want to get out and see the rest of the world. And those Pandaren that want to do that have left on the turtle. And that's essentially where any player Pandaren will start playing from. Now, it's going to be similar to our past start experiences. It's going to be story-focused. simple mechanics, but it's going to really, really draw you into the Pandaren lore, their culture, their history, and find out really what's going on with them as a whole. Super unique. Greg's going to talk about this more in a little bit, but the Pandaren are our first neutral race. So it's a race that you're going to start out as neutral and play from level 1 to 10, and then when you get to level 10, you're going to pick your faction. You'll pick Alliance or Horde at that point, and it's a one-way choice. So you'll make that choice, and then you'll decide and go forward from there. Yeah, we're pretty excited about that. It's the first time we've had a chance to do it, so it should play out really cool. So here's a look at some concept art of the turtle. Like I said, it's a turtle. So you can see there's a valley you start in and you kind of work your way around. We've got a really cool storyline here where you're trying to restore some spirits to that central temple. This is the map. So this entire play space, the entire starting zone is playable here at the show, on the show floor. So you'll be able to go over, get a Pandaren, and play all the way through. That's why we have a final map here, because this whole thing's playable now at the show. Here's some screenshots of a look. This is that central temple you saw. This is a look at the edge of the turtle, so you can kind of see where the turtle hits the ocean there. Obviously, Pandaren love beer, so they need lots of breweries. You'll find these all over the place. And then this is a great shot showing the actual, the island itself that you're playing on. You're on the back of a turtle. So when we say you're on the back of a turtle, we're not trying to fake it and kind of just look like a turtle. This actually is a turtle that you're playing on. When you run up to the edge, you'll be able to see water on the edge. You'll be able to see the head. Everything will be animated. So it's going to feel really cool and unique. And here's a video of some of what it looks like. There you go. Isn't that awesome? I mean, we've been seeing this stuff for a while, and I still think when we log into the game to play it, we're just always blown away by just what they were able to do with this art style specifically for WoW. So next up, let's talk a little bit about what are you going to be killing here, right? You can't just all be Happy Land running around. You got to have stuff to kill. So let's talk about some of the races you're going to run into on Pandaria. First off, we have the Jinyu. The Jinyu is a race of fish-like creatures. They kind of looked at as the wise men on Pandaria. They've been known to take their staff, stick it in the river, and they can hear what the land is saying. It's literally talking to them. You're going to see them across a wide number of zones. They're definitely something that's going to play into your story the whole way through. Here's a concept piece of what they look like. Next up, we've got the Hozu. The Hozu are a monkey-like race. They stand up on their hind legs. They can walk around. They've been known to be really mischievous. They play tons of pranks on the local Pandaren. It's something that's been indigenous to the continent for a long time. And just like the Hozu, they play through in a lot of zones throughout the whole place. You're going to see them in dungeons as well as the zones outside. Here's a look at what they look like. Concept piece. Next up, we've got the Vermin. The Vermin are our take on, we really wanted to do a new kobold. When you look at the kobold, it's the classic creature. Whenever you see them, you always want to take them out. You can fight them in droves. They're not too strong, so you can fight a bunch of them at one time, like a little bit of a nuisance. Here's a look at these guys. We saw this concept art, and we were like, we need to build that right now. And he needs whatever this crazy knife, fork, weapon thing going on. But the Pandaren have lots of farmland, and these are the kind of guys that they've dug tunnels under the farmland, and they're sucking the vegetables down underneath into their tunnels from below. So that's part of the storyline and the stuff you're going to get with these guys. Now, next up, we have the Mantid. This is one of our kind of our pillar enemy races. We're going to have whole raids based around the Mantid, dungeons. They really play a big role in the kind of the overarching story. They're an insect race that's been on the island for millennia. They've lived next to the Pandaren this whole time, but they've kind of been separated from the rest of the continent by a giant wall. And as you're going to find out over the story of the expansion, that they're starting to go a little crazy, and they're coming through the wall in places, and you're going to have to end up dealing with that. So here's a look at them. Now, different than our other insect races that we've had before, like Silithid, these are sentient creatures. Like, they're going to be able to dress themselves, they have their own houses, they have looks. They're not a hive mind like you would get with the Silithid. They're more of a creature that you can expect to be intelligent and use weapons. So we really wanted to play up a different aspect on them.
What language do they speak?
Next up, we've got the Mogu. The Mogu are another ancient race. The Mogu were actually the original race on the island of Pandaria. They were the first race before the Pandaren overthrew them over 12,000 years ago and took the island for themselves. And what's happening now is the Mogu want it back. And so that's going to play another big part of this storyline, is you're going to see them in raids, you're going to see them in dungeons. We really wanted to have a lot of villains for players to fight. Like Chris mentioned, we don't necessarily always have to have one big bad guy that's causing all the badness in the expansion. We kind of want to spread it out and have a number of things that players are dealing with. Here's a look at these guys. So you can see they're kind of big and hulking ogre-like race. And finally, we've got the Shah. The Shah is really unique. What it is it's the manifestation of negative energy on Pandaria. So if you imagine whenever anything bad, someone gets killed, a fight happens, something like that on the island, any sort of battle, essentially what's happening with the Alliance and Horde once they get here, releases Shah energy into the land. It's kind of a shadow form creature. You're going to see it all over the place. Here's a look at what we're thinking, how these guys can feel. Super aggressive, something you definitely want to take out. You could fight this guy as a raid boss for sure. So that's just a quick look at some of the stuff you can expect from the creatures. Next up, we're going to hit the first zone, the Jade Forest. This is where Alliance and Horde are going to be landing. So this naval battle we've talked about that happened off the coast, the Horde end up washing up on the north side. The Alliance ends up washing up on the south side of the zone. So historically, over the past couple expansions, we've had separate start zones where you've been able to come in and choose, like, I want to go to Fashir, do I want to go to Hyjal, do I want to go to Howling Fjord, or do I want to go to Borean Tundra? So here we're going to do one unified start zone, and Alliance and Horde are going to kind of meet up in the middle. So definitely a little bit of a different vibe. The look is very, very unique. It's these tall stone spires and filled with rainforests in the valleys. But on the top of these stone spires, you've got Pandaren buildings, so they create these awesome vistas and really cool landscapes. It's a different look from any WoW zone we've done before. It's definitely going to be your first look at the Hozu and the Jinyu. So you're going to meet these races and actually try to befriend them. The Alliance tries to take the Hozu, while the Horde will try to become friendly with the Jinyu and end up turning them against each other. And this is what ends up causing so much negative energy to be released in the zone, and that's part of the storyline that you're going to play through. This, of course, releases more Shah, and this is super bad. This is why when you get there originally, Pandaren aren't necessarily big fans of you, because what are you doing? You've come into this pristine land, and you just started to tear it apart. We also have a dungeon in this zone, the Temple of the Jade Serpent. We'll be talking about this dungeon in detail at the Dungeon and Raid panel, but it's definitely going to be, it's going to be your 85 to 86 dungeon when you first get there. This dungeon has been kind of taken over by Shah. It's been caused by you. So the whole goal there is for you to go in and cleanse it, essentially, of what you've done. So you've got to look at the map of the zone here. So you can see all those kind of brown dots are the spires throughout the zone. So it's filled with valleys all across. Here's a look at some concept art. Just looks so great. It's got that super unique vibe. Another look at some of the valleys with those spires. And then we've got a video. I'll show you guys. that's the Jade Forest. Now, once you finish the Jade Forest, you'll be heading on to the Valley of the Four Winds. That's our second zone. This zone is huge. It's kind of broken up in two sections. It's got a north side and a south side. The whole northern side of the zone is Pandaren farmlands, while the whole south side of the zone is essentially a coastal jungle. And going along with our theme of kind of having less linear quest content, when you come in here, you're going to be able to choose to go south right at the beginning or go to the north side. Now, obviously, you can come back and do either side later. We want to make sure people feel like they have a choice and they're not being... It's one thing we wanted to kind of hit on a little bit is not having our quest flow feel so linear. So every time you do a zone, you do it in the exact same way. As we said, another thing that goes along here is that we've got a dungeon. So it's one thing we're trying to do a little different is make sure that the dungeons feel like they fit in each zone. So when I say that, I mean that not just that it fits the story like it should be there, but more that it actually exists in the world. So when you go to Valley of the Four Winds and the Storm Stout Brewery is there, you're actually going to see this giant Storm Stout Brewery building. It's something we haven't been able to do a lot of. Sometimes we end up with just a portal, and the portal takes you into the dungeon, but you never see where that dungeon is in the world. So it's a big thing we've tried to do with these zones is make sure that our dungeons really have a presence, like they're definitely there. Your first interaction with the Mantid is going to be here in the Valley of the Four Winds. This is one of the zones that borders the wall I was talking about a little earlier, and one of the first breaches in the wall by the Mantid have happened here. And they're attacking a Pandaren village, and you're going to come in and have to figure this out and deal with that through the quest lines. So here's a look at the map. So you can kind of see that top part of the zone on the north side of the river is all the farmland, and then the southern side is all the coastal jungle. Here's a look at some concepts. So this is so when we were trying to think about what Pandaren farmland would be, we didn't want it to feel anything like the farmland you've seen in WoW, like you see in Westfall or you've seen in other zones where we do human farmlands. We wanted to feel different and have that vibe. So here we've got those tiered rice paddies. This is a side cutaway view of the zone, so you can kind of see how it starts and then teeters all the way down to the coastal jungle down on the edge. And here's a video. See what it looks like. That's Valley of the Four Winds. So next up, Greg's going to come up and talk to you guys a little about some of the new features you'll be seeing in the expansion.
You guys still with us? There's a lot of information we know. We keep saying it's a fire hose. We're just spraying you with new stuff you've never seen before. We usually don't have this much to talk about when we have an expansion, so here we go. Love you too, man. We have a new race, the Pandaren. One of our early concepts here. There's not a lot of the hair and facial styles in yet. If you go out and play, and I encourage you to go do that, you'll probably look like this. That's all coming. They look pretty awesome. And here's the female. And we have variation on the female ready. Now, of course, we don't have the female done, and if you go play through the starting zone, you're going to see a lot of female pandas, and they're going to say, I am a girl, or something on their name, so just use your imagination. They're coming. As you mentioned, you can be Horde or Alliance as a Pandaren. You start out neutral, and at level 10, you can make your choice, kind of depending on the philosophy you espouse, or more likely where all your other characters are. These are the Pandaran classes. Yeah, we can talk a lot about the monk, but you can see there's several other classes they have to choose from. Some of these we thought didn't make as much sense. There weren't a lot of Pandaran fighting back in the wars in Azeroth. Weren't sure what a Pandaran druid meant. A bear that turns into a bear? Or... All right, the Pandaran racials. These have been extensively vetted, I'm sure, are set in stone, and will never, ever change. You get increased stat benefits from food. They like to eat. They also like to cook. And in fact, we're going to try to do some interesting things with cooking because that's such a key element of the Pandaran culture. Inner peace. It's one of those ones that sounds really, really powerful and probably isn't, which is exactly what we look for in a racial. This one, on the other hand, is crazy overpowered. I'm sure we'll never make it. And finally, they need something active to do, and this is it. A little bit of crowd control. Wanted to show out some of the awesome weapons that the artists have put together for the Pandaran start zone. You're going to see a lot of stuff like this. We really want it to feel like you're not in Azeroth. You're in, you're this new place, that entirely different culture and feel. All right. We have a monk. Again, we're going to start with some concept art. Here they are. See the guy there? Really, really excellent animations. We'll show you some more of those in a second here. So, if you ever wanted to play a drunken master, this is your chance. They have 3 specs. Yeah. What we want to do with the Pandara, the monk healer, is to try to experiment a little bit more with a healer that can stand up in melee. If you've ever played, say, Atonement Discipline Priest, you can do a little bit of damage that drives your healing. We don't expect monk healers are going to be doing tons and tons of damage, but we want to kind of experiment with a different type of healing style. Maybe get players who are a little burned out on healing to try something different here. And then finally, you can probably guess what the last one is. Punch someone in the face. We do have this epic start zone for them, so we want players to experience it. With the Death Knight, we thought the story kind of made sense that you're being brought back by the Lich King. Here, it's more that you're starting out on the turtle and eventually will make it to Pandaria, so you start at first level. Very martial arts based, it probably goes without saying, but really trying to embrace this. Even like I said, the healer and the tank are going to do a lot of very kung fu things. And our animation team really delivered on this to a crazy level. There are a lot of new animations for the monk. The tank healer and DPS guy all have different stances they stand in, so even their base kind of idle animations look different. You'll see them all throwing a lot of punches, all of their weapon animations are unique, and this goes for the non-Pandaran too. Oh, you thought that monks were Pandaran only. So our fiction here is now that Pandaria has been rediscovered. While most of the Pandaran are kind of the stay-at-home type, there are the adventurous ones, and they're spreading out a little bit into the Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor. and starting to train some of these other races in the secret arts of monkery or whatever we call it. I think Tom said, if we don't do no monks, monks aren't worth doing, so. I also can't wait to see a Tauren monk do the role. But. All right, what do they use? They hit a lot with their hands and feet. We really want to deliver on that fantasy. They're just sitting there punching and kicking the crap out of those little bunny guys. But we still want them to have weapons. We want you to see your weapons as you're using them. So you can imagine a typical fight might be you build up with your hands and feet, and then you pull out your staff or your other weapon for some kind of killer finisher. We do want to use a lot of stabs and fist weapons. These aren't the only weapons they're going to use, but we thought they're very signature for the monk. We think this will allow us to put a lot more fist weapons in the game. They're really cool. They don't quite have enough users yet, so expect to see a lot more. They can also use one-handed axes, maces, and swords. We're trying to figure out exactly the difference between the dual wielding and the two-handed. We might let anyone do anything. Dual wield might be DPS. That's the kind of thing we're going to iterate on. I'm sure you guys will let us know the right way to do it. And healers can use offhands. We don't want the monks using shields. They're leather armor class, so they'll share a lot of the same gear as druids. Agility for the tank or DPS, and intellect for the healer. Okay, one of the fun things about doing a new class is coming up with a new resource system. We want it to feel a little different, kind of capitalize on what we already know works, but just try to mix it up a little bit. So they have it's an energy-like resource in that it slowly regenerates, and you use this primarily only for two attacks. Your jab, which is your primarily builder, and then the roll attack, which you saw in the opening trailer where the monk is running along and goes into a roll. It's a lot of fun if you go check it out. All our computers over around the corner there. Jab generates light and dark force, which you then use for everything else. So you have some finishing moves that take the light force and some finishing moves that take the dark force. Yeah. We talked about this a lot, and it's pretty controversial, but it's also kind of fun. We really wanted to deliver on this kind of Street Fighter feel that you're punching a lot. And we thought the auto attack was just going to get in the way of that. We wanted it to feel very visceral. You push a button, you see an animation. So I actually think it feels pretty good, but try it out and let us know. This is the current monk resource bar. Again, if you were with us for the Death Knight, this is the kind of thing we iterated on a lot. But you can see we have 4 light force balls and 4 dark force balls on the other side. You would fill those up and then consume them to do finishers. At the moment, in the playtest area around there, this bar is down in the middle of your screen. That's something we've never done before. It's something players have asked us about a lot, so we're going to try it. Again, let us know how it works. Now I'm going to show you a video we put together. We did some fun camera work here, but all of these animations are real. This is what a monk should look like when you're actually in combat. A lot of new animations, really fun. Okay, catch me right there. This is a big one. This isn't something we've made a big secret of. We've kind of done postmortems over how the Cataclysm talent revamp worked out overall. We really like the level 10 choice. You can be an elemental shaman at level 10 rather than having to wait till super high level. You get a fun ability like Mortal Strike right away. We think the level 10 specs are a keeper. We also did remove a lot of junk from the talent trees. There were a lot of these passive kind of increases your attack damage slightly, things like that. They weren't very exciting, and we got rid of some of them. We did actually deliver on our goal of engineering some choices. You could finish a tier, and to go down to the next tier, you'd have to spend a certain more number of talent points to get there. When you finished in your primary tree, you could decide which other tree to sub-spec in. we think that worked out pretty well. On the other hand, there are a lot of things that we think we can still improve the talent system. There's a risk of skipping core talent. In the Fury tree, there's a talent called Raging Blow. If you skip it, you're not being adventurous or creative, you're just being a very bad Fury warrior. We removed junk, but we didn't remove enough junk. I think it's a very fair criticism. There's still some talents in there. They're either downright bad or they're just not interesting enough, and we think we can do better. We do have some choices, but we don't have enough choices. Yes, you might have a different final talent point than another combat rogue, but we don't think that's enough. Like Tom was talking about, what talent trees were supposed to do is really give you a way to customize your character, to feel like I'm different from the other people who play my same spec and class. And despite everything we've done, the cookie cutter builds still persist. We have some customization, but it's just not enough customization. Something players mention a lot is they liked the fantasy, at least, of hybridizing, of saying, you know, I'm going to go a little bit down one tree and a little bit down another tree. We can debate whether or not those builds are ever truly effective, but we know players really kind of want them to be, even if we never really delivered on that. Actually, I think this is really important. I want to mention it. I know it's easy for us to be sitting here on stage kind of like saying, passing down laws from the top of the mountain. This is how WoW is going to change. But these are the kind of things we've been hearing from players really since the talent trees launched, and certainly from Cataclysm. So this isn't just something we decided, hey, let's tinker with talent, that'll be fun. This is something overall we've heard from players for a long time. Guys, you can do better, and we're about to do better. You're welcome. So, talent's gone. Okay. Not completely, but it is so different that we're calling it Talents 2.0. Now, the best way to think about this is you have three types of abilities. You have your class abilities. Say you're a warrior, you get certain abilities for picking warrior. You have your spec abilities. Today, you only really get one spec ability. We're talking about giving you several. And then finally, you have the actual talents, which should be very optional in that you get to choose which one makes the most sense for you. So you still choose your spec level 2, and you get a spec ability right away. And then you get other spec abilities later as it makes sense. So you might get one level 25, level 40, level 70. Anything from your tree that we thought you really need to function, whether it's a core ability like Divine Storm or a fun proc like Art of War, we just give you those now rather than risk you skipping over them. Like I said, some of these are old talents you need to have, and old core abilities not every spec needs. You'll see this particularly for the pure DPS classes, where a Warlock doesn't need so many different dots and nukes when ultimately Destruction and Affliction are supposed to have different rotations. So what we did is just take some things like Immolate and say, okay, that's now a Destruction-only spell. So just as an example, these are the kind of things a Protection Paladin will get. Point of note that Hammer of the Righteous here goes for both Protection and Retribution. There are going to be some abilities that make sense to go into more than one spec. And you can see there are passives and procs in here too. And then you also get to pick talents. There are no longer any talent points or ranks, and there's one talent tree per class. We thought this was really important in order to deliver on the hybridization, or saying, I want to be a little bit of this and a little bit of that. You earn a talent every 15 levels, which sounds scary, but it'll make sense in just a minute. Every time you get to choose a talent, there are 3 choices, and you get to pick one of those. Once you pick one, you can't go back and get the other 2. So you're really going to have to make a hard choice of, do I want shiny object A, B, or C? Our goal is there are no mandatory talents. If you're a healer, you should not see, oh, I have to take this talent because I'm a healer. There may be 3 healing talents, and you pick which one you think would be the most fun, or which one fits your playstyle, or maybe which one matches this certain fight you're about to do. But we shouldn't ever see anyone saying, oh, you have to get this, or you're just doing it wrong. We also think an important concept here is that you can change talents fairly easily, about as easily as you can change glyphs. So, not the kind of thing you can do in combat, but say you pick the fear talent, and you go into a fight where everything's immune to fear, you can say, hang on a sec, I'm going to respec to the stun talent instead, because I know that's useful in this fight. So I'm just going to walk you through the UI here. Our UI designers have done a great job coming up with a new system. This one should look fairly familiar. We changed it from vertical to horizontal, but you still pick a spec at level 10. And then these are all the abilities you would get. In this case, you're picking the Holy Paladin. Holy Shock's still at level 10, and then a slew of other things you get at higher level. A lot of these will be familiar. A couple of these you're probably saying, ooh, that looks interesting and new. Holy Wrath, Holy Only. And then here's the Paladin talent tree. Every level, every time you get to make a talent choice, you get to pick one of these. These are all very powerful. They should feel very unique and very exciting. I really want to emphasize that. You'll see some familiar names in here, but don't assume that it works exactly the same way it does on live. Sanctified Wrath, for example, we had to make the kind of thing that a Holy Paladin or Protection Paladin would also say, you know what, that's something I could really use, that sounds fun, I want to try it. We think this system, as Tom said at the beginning, is going to give players a lot of like cool stuff to geek out over, rather than just saying, hey, what's the cookie cutter spec I need before I can go raiding or PvP. You really want to look at this and analyze and say, I think Veneration sounds fun, but then I'm going to get Sanctified Wrath instead of Divine Purpose, that sort of thing. It's pretty exciting. I think once you see all of the individual talents here, you'll be pretty excited about it too. So here's an example of the Paladin choosing at level 15, choosing Speed of Light, and then the other choices. You can't ever pick two things in one row. We knew when we started out here that the only way to really get you guys to understand how this system works is to go through every freaking talent in the game. So we're going to do a panel right after this one, and we're going to walk you through every class and say, here are your talents, enjoy. All right, I'm going to turn things back over to Tom again.
All right, so we've got more new features to talk about. As you guys may have seen, there was a little bullet point that went by in the preview trailer about scenarios, these PvE scenarios. And you might be asking yourself, what the hell is a PvE scenario? What do they mean? So what a PvE scenario is it's a way for us to give you interesting new things to do that don't really make a whole lot of sense in the context of a typical dungeon, right? A dungeon is all about you go out there and you fight trash, you kill a boss, you fight trash, you kill a boss. And they're usually taking place in these kind of unique areas that we create for the purposes of a dungeon. Scenarios are more about reusing parts of the world that we've either already created in interesting new ways. I'll go over one example, which is the Battle for Goldshire. And it also gives us the ability to do some interesting new types of PvE gameplay that we've never seen before. One way to characterize that potentially would be able to kind of label them as PvE battlegrounds. So what are they? These are short instances for a few players. The number of players can vary based on what the scenario is. The scenario can be for 3 players, for example. And these are all designed for players that are playing their character in a similar way as they would when they're questing. So you don't have the typical like tank, heal, DPS type setups for these types of scenarios that you would for a dungeon. It's a staged experience, or at least in many cases it is, where you'll have different phases of the scenario that you go through and you're trying to accomplish some greater goal. And here's one example, right? So these are purely theoretical examples. This isn't an actual scenario that we're in the process of creating. But if you can imagine for a moment a scenario called the Defense of Goldshire, and let's pretend for a little bit that you and a couple buddies are in there, and your job is at first to clear out a bunch of kobolds. You got to find and return some children in the town, and then kill Goldtooth. And this would be the type of scenario that we would do as an introductory scenario. Maybe we first introduce this scenario at level 10 for players that are leveling up for the first time. But we would even design it in such a way where you could do like a level 90 version of it, so that even if you never got a chance to do it, or you just kind of wanted to go back and do it again, you'd be able to do that. And of course, with our philosophy of being able to do whatever it is you want to do to progress your character, you'd still be able to get Valor points out of doing it at level 90. So, here we are imagining, these are all fake screenshots, by the way, so. Whoa, big gold tooth. Another example that I kind of called out is the idea of being able to do PvE battlegrounds. This is the kind of thing that we've never really done before, we've never really been able to do before. And we'd like to take a stab at doing some stuff like this. So if you imagine this, imagine that this is the Battle of Grizzly Gulch, the Battle of GG. And let's, again, purely hypothetical example, let's imagine that this is a Defense of the Ancient style battleground, right? Except there are no enemy players on the other side. Because there are a lot of players out there that would love to do battleground type content, but are kind of, freaked out by fighting other players, or, makes them really nervous, or they just don't like that kind of thing. So this gives us the ability to do a lot of those similar kinds of mechanics in a PvE setting. And that also allows us to do some slightly different things that we wouldn't normally be able to do. So imagine that you and a couple buddies are in charge of going down the lanes of this PvE battleground called the Battle of Grizzly Gulch. You've got to slay enough soldiers to get your characters powered up, and then dominate the enemy defenses to destroy their 6 towers and the barracks, and then out comes the boss, and you'll have to apply the beat down to General Drake. Here's actually a map that we've been working on a little bit. This one is like an extension of a Defense of the Ancient style battleground that we're currently working on, so you can kind of imagine the scenario taking place in an environment like this. So these scenarios have a wide variety of different applications that really give us the ability to do new things that we haven't done before with dungeons, because those are very much about tank, heal, DPS, fight some mobs, tank them, heal them, beat them down, boss, etc. Another important point here is that there isn't player collision, that these are designed to be PvE. And one other way to look at these is that they could potentially replace group quests. I know that a lot of you probably experienced way back in the day when we used to do a lot more group quests out in the outdoor world, but we always had problems with, some people would be halfway into doing the group quest when you join up with the quest, and you kind of have to start over again, and all the kind of awkwardness of, LFGing inside, trade chat or whatever, or in an LFG chat for that zone of trying to find a group to do your group quest, because this gives us a more elegant way to use some of those interesting outdoor areas to do group style questing. So that brings us to how it kind of works, and kind of a little look into that. Now, not surprisingly, this is the type of queue and go sort of scenario, like a dungeon finder. So you'd pop open a UI and you'd queue for it. And on the upside, no role requirements. It kind of implies automatically very short queues. So you might even be able to imagine being able to do something like this while you're waiting for your dungeon queue to pop, because they're intended to be pretty quick experiences. And of course, this is one of many different options to earn Valor points to progress your character. So now let's talk about another one of those new features that went by, and that's challenge mode dungeons. Hopefully this will be something that excites a lot of you in the room. I don't know how many of you guys were around way back in the day when we had this thing called the 45-minute Baron Run. So that was pretty exciting, and I've always really wanted for us to be able to do that sort of thing again and really institutionalize it in a way that adds a whole new type of gameplay. Granted, there were some not fun elements to it. For example, like if it was blocking your progression to getting your tier 1.5 set back in the day, that part of it was a little bit of a downer. But that won't happen here. So what are challenge mode dungeons? Dungeons, as you know, are these experiences that you guys go through already. But wouldn't it be interesting if we had essentially time trial versions of these dungeons? And so challenge modes really are that. When you set yourself into a challenge mode and you group up with your buddies or potentially queue into a challenge mode dungeon, the purpose of doing this is going to be to complete the dungeon in a specified amount of time. And so that implies a whole different level of coordination and teamwork that you don't necessarily get when you're just sort of plodding through, either because you're new to the dungeon or you're just trying to get the loot out of it and you're just kind of taking your time to do whatever. And you'll rip through there as fast as you can in order to earn bronze, silver, or gold medals for doing it as quickly as you possibly can. The gear levels for these are normalized, which is another important distinction here. So what that means is that, for example, if you were to apply that to today's world, you would all be brought down to the same level of gear. All your gear would scale down to the same level of gear, some standard level, that you would go through this. So it isn't the kind of thing that you can just get better gear to overpower your way through. So when you're able to, talk about, yeah. So you'll be able to brag to your buddies about how you got that, 23-minute run, and you'll know that it's a fair basis of comparison because everybody's gear was at the same level. And what do you get out of it other than Valor points, of course? You also get sweet-looking gear with no stats. What might that be for? Transmogrify, perhaps. So we're going to create an entire tier of gear that has a unique and special look that you'll be able to get exclusively by doing challenge modes. So if you do the challenge modes and you rip through there and you get the gold medal in all the different dungeons, you'll be able to earn yourself an entire set of gear to show off to your friends about what a badass you are for being able to clear these dungeons as quickly as you can. So that summarizes the way challenge mode dungeons work. Really a big part of this for us is giving you the ability to have bragging rights and leaderboards. So that's going to be a big part of this feature. It's going to feel like competitive PvE in a sense. So we want to be able to do things like, when you open your character sheet, you'll be able to see your best times for any given dungeon. You'll be able to see what the rewards are for the different dungeons if you complete them in gold, silver, or bronze times. You'll also be able to compare yourself to your guildmates and other people on your realm. So you'd be able to pop open a UI and see, what are the top times for people on this realm for this dungeon. Get yourself on that leaderboard. Show people what a badass you really are. And so that sums it up for challenge modes. With that, we are going to hand it over to Corey to talk about the pet battle system.
All right, I'm super hyped to talk to you guys about this feature because I think pets are something that plays World of Warcraft probably has a pet in some way, shape, or form. I don't think not necessarily everyone is a collector and has all the achievements, but it's definitely something that I think everyone knows what it is, and it's a feature we definitely felt like we could expand upon and offer some new gameplay. Whoa. There we go. So what exactly are we doing here? Essentially, you're going to be able to collect, you're going to level, and you're going to fight with your pets. So we're going to go through all of these in a little bit more detail, but first some key elements. First of all, it's accessible to everyone. We didn't want it to be a feature that was locked to the max level that only a few people would get access to. We wanted it something to be that everyone could do. So you'll be able to start this at a really low level and start collecting pets, leveling them up, and building your team. Another thing is it's going to work with almost every pet in the game right now, as well as a ton of new pets that we're going to be adding for the system for you to collect. So for all you people already out there that already have, say you've got 100 pets, most likely almost all of those pets are going to work with the system right when you get it. Now granted, you're going to have to level them on your own, but they'll still be able to work with the system. It's also going to be a lot of customization, things like being able to name your pets, things like being able to have different ones, giving them individual abilities. We'll get into that more in a little bit. So as far as collection goes, how does that work? Like I said, it's going to work with your existing pets. So a lot of people are going to start the system and already have a pet to start with and get it going. There's another type of pet you're going to be able to get that we're introducing new for Mists of Pandaria, and this is going to be called a wild pet. And the way wild pets work is you're going to find them out in the world. Essentially, when you find them, you're going to be able to engage in battle with them and fight with them using a pet that you already have. And then you're going to be able to get that pet and add him to your collection. Now, what's cool about these wild pets is that they have random varying stats. So you're not necessarily going to just go out and be able to get all the wild pets you want, within that first week, because they're going to have varying stats. So you might want a pet that's really good at, say, tanking, or a pet that maybe has like a CC ability. So you're going to keep wanting to collect these pets until you find that one that has the right set of stats, then you can start leveling it up. The other thing about the wild pets that's pretty cool is that they have unique spawning abilities. So for example, certain wild pets you might only find during a certain season, like winter. Certain pets you might only find when it's raining, for example. Certain pets might only spawn during the day or the night. So there could be a pet that only shows up during the spring while it's raining in Elwyn Forest at night. Now, they're not all going to be like that, obviously, but we definitely want to mix it up so that people have a lot of pets to collect over a long period of time. Just like the mock-ups Tom showed you earlier, these are all mock-ups of how we think the UI would work from our UI team. So over there on the left, you've got your list of pets. You can search and filter through to find the ones you want. And then over on the right, you can see that pet's stats. And then at the bottom, you can see the abilities that they've unlocked. We're looking at unlocking something like 6 abilities over 25 levels. And then on the right, there's an interesting spot called location. And if you click that, you're actually going to be able to find out where can you get this pet in the world. So instead of having to alt-tab out of the game, go to the web and go to a database site and try to find out, well, where can I find this guy? Where does he spawn? Where do I get him? Similar to what we did with the Dungeon Journal, where you could see all the items and find out what bosses drop them, you're going to be able to find out where to get all your pets straight out of the journal from within the game. So now you've collected some pets, you've got a good amount of them, you're managing them, now you've got to level them. How do you do this? Well, you fight with other pets. And when you win battles, you earn experience, and experience levels your pet. As you level, you're going to learn new abilities that you can then use in battle. Now you're also going to have slots to place these abilities in. Every pet can use 3 abilities in battle at one time. So a pet's going to learn 6, and you get to choose any 3 of those and place them on your pet to use in the battle. And I've got it mock up so you guys can see how this looks too. Every time you level, you're going to earn stats as well. So the higher level your pet, obviously it's going to be stronger as it's growing. Now you're going to be able to level multiple pets because you're going to want to build a team. You don't want to just take one pet and get them all the way up. You might want to take a couple pets and level them all up together so that you can have a team of pets that are at similar level. So here's a look at the team interface. So this is also within the journal, it's just a different tab. And so here we've got a team. This guy has 2 pets on his team, and you can see those 3 slots for abilities where he's dragged an ability in. And those are the abilities that when this pet goes into battle, that's what shows up on the bar, and you can press that ability to use it. So over on the left, these are the pets and their level, and then on the right, you just drag them over, and that's how you would build a team. Now, how does the fighting work, right? So now you've got a pet, you've leveled them up, you want to actually fight against someone and use all this stuff that you've been earning. So you're going to be able to fight both in PvE in the world against the wild pets, but you're also going to be able to fight friends and possibly enemies using the PvP battle as well. One thing that's different, it's going to be turn-based. So we wanted to slow things down a little bit from WoW combat. WoW combat's super fast. You know, people can sometimes die in like 15, 20 seconds right away. So we wanted to introduce something that felt a little different, could slow it down, and it's something that's a little bit more of a thinking game. So mechanics-wise, you know, it's not going to be something that's going to move so quickly, you're not necessarily going to miss it or know what happened. So we wanted to give something that felt a little bit different. So it could be, you know, just people that might want to focus on that could have a different piece of content to focus on. Kind of like we were saying earlier, that we want content for everyone. We want to have a feature that a lot of different people could play, not just something that's for a small segment of the population. So you're going to fight with a team of 3, and we're going to allow you to queue. Just like we have dungeon queuing, you know, you'd be able to queue up and go against another group, and we'd look at the level of their pets so we could make sure that we put you against other pets that were within the same range. So hopefully you'd have a fight that feels there's something about the level that you could handle. So here's a look at what it would look like. This is just a mock-up. So one thing that's important is we want to keep the WoW characters in the scenes for the fights because they're important. They're the ones that are collecting the pets. They're the masters of the whole system. So we want to have the WoW characters actually be a part of it. When your pet does an ability, you know, your guy might do an emote. He might do something that makes sense going along with that ability that you used. You can see the bar at the bottom has the abilities you'd be casting, and then you can see your other pets kind of underneath the portraits there. This is just a mock-up, like we said, but it's, you know, something we could envision it looking like. So customization, like I said earlier, naming your pets is a big thing. So you could have a pet that you've had for a really long time, and you finally be able to give them a name and then see that name in battle. We're also talking about having items. So imagine the idea that you could have an item that we'd have an item slot on the pet. You can equip an item. Maybe you could even put gems in that item so that you could modify the stats on the pet as well. So we could pull in some of the profession systems. You're going to be able to do individual builds, like we were showing you earlier, with abilities. So you can take a certain pet and change his abilities and change his slots out so that your team will feel different from other teams around you. And finally, we've kind of got this concept of masters. So you're going to be able, we wanted to really have people that are into the system feel like they could travel around the world and have a reason to go to other places. So you're going to be able to go to, like, say you're going to go to Daenerys and there's a goblin there that's really great with training mechanical pets. So you'd be able to go there and fight him, and if you can beat him, he'll grant you what we're calling a master ability. And then you could use that ability on any of your pets to fight in battle. So here's a look at how this could work. So this guy's got 3 abilities at the top right now, and then he's chosen a master, and then over on the right we see the map, and that shows you where you can go to fight that master and the ability that you could get. So it just adds a little bit more depth and customization into the system as a whole. So that kind of wraps up the core features. So now I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about some of the dungeons that we're expecting to have. We're looking at doing 9 new dungeons for Mists of Pandaria. We're super excited to be able to do a lot of different new dungeons, a lot of awesome looks. There's going to be 6 dungeons specifically on Pandaria that you're going to be able to fight in. We also have something coming back that we found was very popular with Cataclysm. It's a few updates of classics. And so we picked a couple. Skullmats. And what's cool about this is we've gone into Skullmats and it's got a new layout. It's gonna have bosses that are reworked with all new abilities. It's going to be a little bit easier to navigate, not so complicated, but still it's going to feel really cool, really fresh, and we're going to talk a ton about it in the dungeon panel later today. The other one is Scarlet Monastery. So Scarlet, as you know it now, has 4 wings, but some of these wings only have 1 boss, and then we have another wing that has a ton of bosses. So we wanted to take it and make it feel a little bit more even. So we're going to redo Scarlet Monastery completely and introduce it as 2 separate wings as their own unique dungeons with their own bosses. We got a few screenshots of a couple of the new dungeons. This is the Stormstout Brewery here. You're going to be helping Chin Stormstout recapture this brewery for his family heritage. This is a look at the Shadowpan Monastery. It's a really awesome outdoor dungeon. And this is the Temple of the Jade Serpent, which is in the first zone, the Jade Forest. It's another dungeon that goes indoor and outdoor. It's something we're trying to do with a lot of the dungeons, is get a whole different vibe with players going both indoor and outdoor at different times. So not to be left out, we're also obviously going to be introducing new raids. We're looking at having 3 raids to launch with. The races we're looking to feature in these raids are the Mogu and the Mantid. So we talked about a little earlier as kind of being 2 of our pillar enemy races. So definitely fit well into the whole raid vibe as far as having creatures that you're going to want to kill. So as you know, we're introducing Raid Finder with 4.3 for the Dragon Soul raid. In Mists of Pandaria, Raid Finder is going to be available for all raids, right from day 1. So all the raids are going to have essentially 3 difficulty levels of Raid Finder, Normal, and Heroic right off the bat. We think it's going to be great because it's going to give that other level for people that are looking to get into raiding a chance to do that with content that really fits for them. And like Tom mentioned earlier, we're looking to bring back world raid bosses. I think the big thing here is that obviously there were problems with them originally, but I think we've figured out solutions to those problems, to the fact of them staying camped, to the fact that they drop very specific pieces of gear that players need. I think, we've got solutions to those problems, so why not bring them back? They were something that players really liked, so that's something we really want to do here for Mists of Pandaria. Like I said, we'll have a lot more info on this at the Raid and Dungeons panel later today. So, questing. What's going on with quests in the new game? A couple different things. One thing is we definitely want to focus on more max level content. It's something that we saw with Cataclysm, that people burned right through the content very quickly, and we saw that they really wanted more content to do at max level. So it's something we want to focus on here. We still obviously want a strong leveling experience along the way, but we want to make sure when you get there, you have a lot of stuff to do. and stuff that can give you valor points that you can do at that level. So this is that kind of thing. We really want to focus on that. Things like the Molten Front from 4.2, we want to do things like that right from the beginning, so players have different choices when they hit level 90. So we're talking about having multiple hubs for that kind of stuff all over the world. Those will play into the factions as well, but it'll give players a different thing to do at max level and not just necessarily the same options that they've always had historically. Another thing that goes along with that is maybe giving some incentives to dungeon and our raid players for doing outdoor daily kind of stuff. So for example, say, if you did 5 daily quests, you would get a buff. And that buff, if you happen to go into a dungeon with that buff, you might get a chance to roll on a piece of loot that only shows up to the players that have that buff. So maybe you went out and did a few dailies first and then go and do the dungeon. It helps kind of motivate some play there from both sides. So like I was talking about a little earlier with Valley of the Four Winds, we're really looking to make the quests feel less linear. So not the fact that they're always going to feel completely different, but the fact that we give you some choices. So when you come back and you go through a zone, you can do it in a little bit of a different level. Same thing with flying from max level. We mentioned this earlier. It's just something that feels better to not have that. To keep people on their ground mounts, we can introduce different types of quest content that really fits. And we don't have to worry so much about people flying up in the air and landing on the boss mob to kill him right away without clearing anything along the way. It just really, I don't know, it doesn't have that good vibe to it. You didn't feel like you really did it. You kind of cheated a little bit and flew in. So by keeping people on the ground, it'll really feel better. Finally, faction improvements. Factions are something we've had in the game for a long time. We've done a number of different things with them. And here we're looking to shake it up again with offering players more ways to earn the items they want. So, whereas you look right now, we ended Cataclysm and we had Tol Barad, and we had a number of great items there, but it was kind of your only option of a place to go. We want to have more options for players to go, but still be able to use all those options towards getting the gear that they want. So we're looking at having groups of factions, and you can do any quest within these factions that you want, but they all lead towards that awesome, flying mount reward, or that one thing that you really want to get. So you don't feel like you have to grind so much. We want factions to be fun. We don't want them to feel grindy. And that's something we're really going to be focusing on here. So do we have a lot of PvPers here? Great. So we're talking about doing some new battlegrounds. We don't know exactly which of these battlegrounds we're going to do. These are all ideas that we're working on, but we figured it's BlizzCon, so we'll fill you guys in on the stuff we're thinking about, and we'll talk about a few of them. So we're looking at a couple different types of battlegrounds here with different gameplay styles. Obviously we've had CTF, and we've had kind of capture King of the Hill style games where you have to hold a certain area to earn points. So we're looking to do a couple different styles of battleground here. Another thing is we're looking to do a new arena. Right now we're calling it the Tolvir Proving Grounds, and this is located out in Uldum. I'll have some screenshots to show you of this in a little bit. So first, let's talk about the Stranglethorn Diamond Mine. The concept behind this is it's a goblin mine below northern Stranglethorn. Alliance and Horde are fighting over it to get these minerals out of it. And we're looking at doing a payload-style gameplay. So essentially, you'd have these mine cars that you have to escort to a depot. When it hits the depot, you'd get points. We're looking at multiple tracks within the actual mine itself, and the first team, essentially, to escort enough cars to the depots and get the points would win. But it would feel very varied with a lot of different options every time you play, because you could get a mine car and send it on a different track each time. And we're also talking about having you actually be able to, in the middle of the game, send the car off to a different track. A track could split, and a player could sit there and decide which way he wants it to go. So it's a unique kind of style of gameplay, something that we feel like could be really cool with WoW's PvP. So this is a look at a map of how that could work. There in the center where it says Diamond Mine would be where the carts start. And then there's a couple different tracks that lead all the way around the cave. And you can see some of the tracks split and go in different directions. There's some bridges there where when a track goes across a bridge, you could knock guys off the bridge. There's all kinds of opportunities to do cool things here. Here's some concept art for this one. This is one we've definitely gotten a little bit of progress on, to the point where we've got some playable prototypes. So next up, there's one we're talking about called the Valley of Power. And this would be about getting an ancient Mogu artifact and capturing that artifact. And Alliance and Horde both want it because it would offer power for their war against the other side. Now, the way the gameplay would work is essentially you'd have an object, and you pick up the object, and the longer you hold it, your team earns points. Now, depending on where you stand in the area of the actual map, you could earn more or less points. So if you run off in the corner and hide, you're going to earn less. But if you stay out in the middle where it's wide open, you would earn more points. The ball itself would be doing damage to you, so the longer you hold it, you're taking more and more damage. So you'd need healers with you to keep you alive. But it's a really fun style of gameplay. It's something we think, again, would fit really, really well with WoW. So here's a look at how something like this could work. We'd have some start areas on the two sides. That's a ledge going all the way around. And then some stairs that lead down kind of into a recessed area. And the orb is right there in the center. So you'd start and run right through for it. We've got a couple simple pillars for line of sight, but really a simple map. For something like this, the gameplay is all about the combat. You don't really necessarily need a lot of line of sight blockers or things in the map to make it fun. And here's what I was talking about with the point values. You could see the further away you are, the less points you would earn. Closer to the middle, the more you would get. The concept piece of where this could fit into the world. And finally, we've got Tolvir Proving Grounds. We haven't done a new arena in a long time, so we thought, maybe it's time to add another one in. A lot of players are very happy with the arenas that we have now, so we've been tentative to add a new one. But this really felt like a cool opportunity to use a really neat and do an arena that could be simple and that players would really like. So we based it off Nagrand Arena, which is one of our most popular arenas. And it's got a great sense of place in the world because it feels like it could be in Uldum. When you go there, you would know exactly that it fits. So here's a look at it from the top down. It's just a simple square with 4 line of sight blockers. They're kind of on. And then here's a look at it from the side of how it could fit in Uldum. So we have one other new feature we're talking about adding in, and Greg's going to tell you about it.
You guys still with us? Almost done. We're almost done.
We're getting close.
Go to the bathroom soon. Achievements. Let's do this. It's pretty much all we can say about it. We're going to take some of the achievements and let them be shared across all the characters you have, particularly things like the raid achievements and some of the ones that are more difficult to get. And then this will also give us the possibility to introduce some new types of achievements. So, for example, we could say, get every profession to max level, which would be really cruel to do for one character, but across your stable of characters, it'd be kind of fun. So look for this soon. All right. Talk a little bit about some class changes coming up. I think most of these are pretty exciting. First one is a change we're going to try for resilience. We really like the way resilience works as a stat for PvP. We like the way that when you're hardcore at the very competitive levels, getting even a little bit more resilience can make a big difference. And we know that it gives you a good goal to work towards and makes the PvP gear rewarding. Our concern is that it's a big barrier of entry into Battlegrounds or Arena. There used to be a day when you could kind of come in your PvE gear and gradually work up to better PvP gear. Players have told us now they feel like they just can't compete in PvP at all because there's such a big step up. So the way we're going to try to do this is to treat resilience as a base stat, which means you'll get a little bit every time you level up. Even naked, your character will have some resilience. And then as you get PvP gear, you'll get up to the kind of resilience you have now. We don't want PvE gear to be the best gear for PvP, but we want it to be something you can use, and vice versa. All right. A few other things I'm going to talk about. The future of ranged weapons, warlocks, shaman, and druids. I can't talk about everyone, but we still love you. Just had to throw that out there. Okay, ranged weapons. Ooh. I'm just going to milk this for a second, so just... Okay, it's gone. So once we decided to make this change, then we're left with what does the hunter do with their melee weapon? It's just a stat stick. So, hunters don't need melee weapons anymore. You just get your ranged weapon, you're good to go. And the funniest thing about this is we went really quick from everything is a hunter weapon to nothing is a hunter weapon. Okay, this leads to some other questions that I'll hit real quick. We don't think we even need a range slot for all of the other characters. I know, it's crazy. We think the relic slot is like one of the least interesting pieces of gear we can introduce. It's got some stats on it, but we don't drop them in Dungeons and Raids. You pretty much get your new one every tier and you're good to go. There's not a lot of gameplay there. Honestly, we don't think we'll really miss it. The Rogue and Warrior will just throw their melee weapons when they need to do ranged attacks. So that's what I mean here is literally the gun, bow, and crossbow are hunter weapons, and the other classes don't ever want them. And then finally, we know some of you casters want to be Harry Potter. So rather than cutting the wand completely, we'll just make it a main hand weapon. So like you have your caster dagger, your spell sword, sometimes you'll get a wand, it'll be statted like the other items, you can use it in your main hand. Warlocks. I'm just kidding. I beat on Paladins so much, I had to show love. Warlocks are one of those classes we wanted to take a really hard look at with the new talent system because we thought once some of those kind of signature abilities are available to any Warlock, you're really left with like a bunch of guys that are kind of using similar spells and doing similar things. We really thought there's a lot of room to kind of push Affliction, Demo, and Destro away from each other a little bit. So the way we're going to try this is we have a unique resource for every spec. We're going to keep Soul Shards for Affliction. We like the improvements we made for Soul Shards and Cataclysm. We totally agree with the feedback that they're not quite interesting enough, and we have some cool ideas for them. But Soul Shards will be something Affliction uses. You pick Affliction at level 10, you get shards. If you pick Destro or Demo, you're going to have something different. Demonology is a new resource called Demonic Fury. You build up Demonic Fury by doing stuff, and when you hit max Demonic Fury, you then metamorphosize. So rather than it being a cooldown, you can try to build it up constantly. You can try to be in demon form a little more often. We're going to do some new, cooler abilities that you get to have in demon form. We think this will make the spec just play very differently. And we have a new resource for Destruction. Destruction has always been a little tricky to design because it kind of feels like, hey, I'm the Warlock who thinks he's a mage. And we just don't think that's a rich enough kit for Destro. We feel like Destro's been... could stand to have a little more excitement going on. What Infernal Embers are, as you can imagine, the Destro Warlock who keeps casting fire spells slowly gets hotter and hotter and eventually catches on fire. And when you hit this fire space, then your conflags do really crazy damage. The problem with ever having those big destruction nukes be too powerful is the burst issues we have. But if you have to build up to get to that point, we think we can handle throwing some really massive conflags out there. So this will be the kind of thing, again, you can build it up pretty quickly, hit your big nuke, and then build it up again. We think this will be just a lot more fun overall to play the spec. And then if you want to switch specs to Affliction or Demo, you're going to feel pretty different. Shaman. This isn't a really big section, but we think totems are a really cool mechanic, but we agree that it's not so fun to constantly be dropping, I need my Strength of Earth, I need whatever, just to do competitive DPS or healing, and just to kind of be the buff bitch for everyone else in the group. We'll still keep the concept of buffs. You'll still bring them with you to a group, but it'll just be something you can have innate or cast like Arcane Int or something like that. We want all totems to be about utility. And that means we have to fill in the design space a little bit with some new totems. So we have an Earth Grab totem that does a big root around it. We have the crazy Repulsion totem that keeps people from getting close to the shaman or wherever they put the totem. And then we have the Bulwark totem, which puts a shield on the shaman and helps them to take a little more damage. Now, when we talk about the shaman talent tree here just a little bit, you'll see how some of these totems fit into the talent tree. Some are core and some are talents you have to choose, the exclusion of others. And druids. This is a pretty short section, but it kind of shows what we can do with this new spec and talent system we have. Druids always felt like they had 4 specs, so now they do. Feral stays as the cat-based melee DPS spec, but we're adding a new spec called Guardian, and this is the bear spec. There'll still be a lot of overlap between the two. Some of the fun of playing the Druid is the flexibility, and in fact, when we talk about the talent trees, you'll see that we're really trying to go after the player who wants to be able to shift around into lots of different forms. So there'll be a lot of overlap between the Feral and Guardian spec, but overall, if you want to be the tank for your group, you would probably want to pick Guardian. And all Druids can still go cat or bear form. You're not losing that ability. All right, just because we didn't mention you, I still want to think that we're not doing anything for you in Mist of Pandaria. We have done a massive spellbook cleanup. We've gotten rid of some more junk. We've tried to find roles for some of those spells that never actually did anything. We want to clean up action bars a little bit, but not removing the fun things, just kind of removing this spell has such a very narrow niche that I don't use it often. Rotations are improved, kind of how I mentioned for Warlocks. We're doing that pass on all of the specs, even if we're not changing your core resource. You now automatically learn spells in the field. You don't have to go back and visit your trainer. It always makes us cry a little inside to see a level 15 or 20 player going along and they have all these spells they haven't learned yet because it's just not worth it going back to the trainer. This feels pretty good. Trainers will still be there for things like respecking. Lots of new spells. There's a lot in the talent trees. There are a few new core spells where it makes sense. We're still thinking about giving everyone a new level 87 spell. Level 90, you'll get your final talent point, but we might give you a new spell at 87. Specs more developed, like I mentioned with the Warlock and Druid. And overall, we really want talent trees to be fun. They shouldn't be a chore. They shouldn't be the thing you just look up on the internet to find your cookie cutter build. They should be something you can really obsess over and have a lot of fun with. And I think that wraps it up for us. As you can see, the team has been crazy hard at work on this. Usually when we talk about a new expansion, we have a couple of concept pieces and that's it. But our artists, programmers, producers, the whole team has really been kicking ass trying to get this together. And we can't wait for you guys to get a look at it. You should definitely go play it. We have a lot of Q&A sessions coming up tomorrow where you can ask questions if we've blown your mind with all this information. And hope you enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you for attending the World of Warcraft preview panel. Up next, World of Warcraft Class Talent System panel, beginning at 2:15.